The date is March 3rd, 1969. The location is the central highlands of Vietnam, a place where the map ceases to matter and the geography becomes a claustrophobic nightmare of triple canopy jungle and razor-sharp elephant grass. We are near the borders of Laos and Cambodia, deep within the operational shadow of the Ho Chi Minh Trail. For the soldiers of the North Vietnamese Army, specifically the 16th Company of the 202nd Armored Regiment, this night is supposed to be the culmination of a miracle. They have done the impossible. Through weeks of agonizing labor, under the constant threat of American B-52 Stratofortress aircraft turning the jungle into a lunar landscape, they have moved heavy armor where no armor was ever meant to go. They have disassembled, dragged, and camouflaged a squadron of PT-76 amphibious tanks hundreds of miles south. These Soviet-made vehicles are the pride of their unit. They are light, maneuverable, and armed with a 76mm main gun capable of blowing apart the sandbag bunkers of the American Special Forces camp known as Ben Het. From the perspective of the North Vietnamese tank commander peering through his periscope, the tactical situation is perfect. The Americans are blind. It is pitch black, a darkness so absolute that it feels heavy against the skin. The NVA doctrine relies on this darkness. They own the night. They know the Americans rely on air support, which is grounded or imprecise in this visibility, and artillery, which takes time to calculate. The NVA plan is simple. Roll the PT-70, 6 tanks out of the tree line, crush the perimeter wire, and obliterate the camp before the defenders can wake up. They believe they are fighting infantry soft targets, flesh and bone, protected only by flimsy wooden structures and fear. They initiate the assault. The silence of the jungle is shattered by the high-pitched whine of the PT-76 diesel engines and the distinct crack of their main guns firing. The first rounds slam into the Ben Het perimeter. The NVA crews are confident. They are the apex predators in this sector. There is no intelligence suggesting the Americans have anything in this remote outpost that can match the armor plating of a Soviet tank. They are ghosts in the machine, striking from the void. But then, the impossible happens. It is not the sound of a return shot that confuses them first, it is the sound of the jungle itself changing. Beneath the roar of their own engines, the NVA crews feel a vibration in the earth that should not exist. It is a deep, guttural thrumming, a mechanical bass note that resonates through the hull of their amphibious tanks. It sounds like a landslide, but it is rhythmic, it is mechanical, and it is close. Suddenly, the darkness ahead of them does not just break, it is erased. A violent, invisible force slams into the lead PT-76 tank. There is no muzzle flash from the American lines consistent with a recoilless rifle. There is no overhead whine of an aircraft, just an instantaneous, catastrophic impact. The lead North Vietnamese tank, one moment a weapon of war, is instantly transformed into a jagged sculpture of burning metal. The turret is nearly ripped from the chassis. Inside the remaining PT-76 tanks, panic begins to bleed into the discipline. The commanders are screaming into their headsets. "Where did it come from? What hit us?" They traverse their turrets, scanning the black wall of the jungle. They see nothing. No muzzle flashes, no troop movement, just the burning wreck of their comrade's vehicle illuminating the trees. They fire blindly into the dark, hoping to suppress whatever infantry team got lucky with a rocket. But then, it happens again. A second impact. This one is even more precise. The shell moves at a velocity that defies the physics of a shoulder-fired weapon. It tears through the light armor of the Soviet tank as if it were wet paper. The explosion illuminates the jungle for a fraction of a second, and in that strobe light effect, the NVA observers see something that stops their hearts. They do not see men, they do not see bunkers. For a split second, illuminated by the death of their own vehicle, they see a silhouette. It is massive. It is wide, low-slung, and monstrously heavy. It sits perfectly still in the kill zone, completely invisible until it chooses to speak. And when it speaks, it spits fire with a precision that suggests the Americans are not looking through standard optics. It suggests they can see in the dark. This is the Cold War Impact Channel. If you enjoy deep dives into military history and the untold stories of the Cold War, please subscribe and turn on notifications. We unravel the mysteries of the past, one declassified document at a time. Back in the turret of the surviving NVA tank, the confusion turns into a frantic investigation. The commander orders his driver to reverse, to find cover behind a ridge. This was not in the briefing. The intelligence report stated clearly, Ben Het is a special forces camp. Green Berets, indigenous strikers, light weapons, mortars, maybe a few recoilless rifles. There was no mention of this. The NVA are now realizing they have walked into a trap, but they cannot understand the nature of the trap. How did the Americans move heavy assets into a besieged hilltop without being heard? And more importantly, how are they firing with such terrifying accuracy in zero visibility? The PT-76 tanks stop firing, trying to disappear back into the night, hoping their cloak of invisibility returns. But the enemy out there in the dark is not guessing. It is tracking them. As the NVA commander peers into the gloom, he realizes with a sinking feeling that the darkness is no longer his ally. He is being watched. He is being hunted. And whatever is hunting him is bigger, louder, and hitting harder than anything he has ever encountered in the jungle. The predator has become the prey, and they have no idea why. The interior of a Soviet-built PT-76 tank is a cramped, suffocating box of steel and noise. In the humid heat of the Vietnamese dry season, the temperature inside the hull rises to over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Sweat stings the eyes of the gunner as he presses his face against the rubber eye guard of the optic sight. But it is not the heat that makes his hands shake. It is the baffling reality of what is happening outside. The surviving North Vietnamese crews are now scrambling for survival. They are veterans of the jungle. They know the rhythm of an ambush. Usually, you fire, the enemy panics, and you exploit the chaos. But the enemy on the hill is not panicking. The enemy has stopped firing wild bursts and has settled into a rhythmic, methodical execution. The NVA commander in the second tank screams for his driver to flank left, pushing the amphibious vehicle through a dense thicket of bamboo. The PT-76 tank is designed for reconnaissance and infantry support. It is light, weighing only 14 tons. Its armor is thin enough to float. It relies on speed and a low profile. As they tear through the vegetation, the commander believes his maneuver has worked. He has moved 50 meters to the west. In the pitch black, without thermal sights or advanced optics, he should be invisible again. He should have the element of surprise. He orders the gunner to rotate the turret toward the muzzle flashes on the hill. "Fire at the flashes," he commands. The 76mm gun roars. The shell screams across the gap and slams into the unseen enemy position. Through the periscope, the commander sees a shower of sparks. A direct hit. A cheer goes up inside the humid hull. They have hit the beast. They expect to see the secondary explosion, the cook-off of ammunition, the burning fuel that signals the death of a tank. But the darkness does not burn. Instead, the sparks fade instantly. There is no fire. There is no explosion. The enemy silhouette remains exactly where it was, an unmoving black void against the starry sky. The NVA shell, capable of destroying bunkers and trucks, has simply bounced off. A cold realization washes over the crew. They are not fighting up-gunned, armored personnel carriers. They are not fighting reinforced bunkers. They are fighting something plated in heavy steel. Something that can shrug off a direct hit from a tank gun as if it were a stone thrown at a wall. Before they can process this impossibility, the jungle erupts again. The return fire is immediate. It does not come from where they were. It comes to where they are. The enemy gunner has tracked their movement through the bamboo, through the darkness, and through the camouflage. A 90mm solid-shot tracer round screams out of the Ben Het perimeter. It looks like a streak of angry red lightning. It passes mere inches above the commander's hatch. The sonic boom of the passing shell is so violent it rattles the teeth of the crew inside. The wind displacement alone snaps the bamboo stalks around them. "Reverse! Reverse!" the commander screams. The driver slams the gears. The PT-76 tank lurches backward, its tracks churning the red clay. They are retreating, but they are also investigating. The NVA radio network is alive with frantic chatter. Every unit is reporting the same terrifying anomaly. They report seeing a strange, faint, pinkish glow emanating from the American position, a dull, red eye that looks like a dying ember. It is barely visible to the naked eye, but it is there, steady and unblinking. They do not know it yet, but they are staring directly into the source of their destruction. This pink light is the visual signature of a xenon searchlight operating in the infrared spectrum. It is invisible to the standard human eye, but in the specific atmospheric conditions of the humid jungle night, it creates a ghostly, faint resonance. To the Americans, the jungle is bathed in green light. To the North Vietnamese, it is just darkness, punctuated by this demonic red glare. The engagement distance is closing. The NVA tanks, realizing their main guns are ineffective at long range against this mystery armor, try to close the gap. They push forward, engine revs screaming, trying to get within point-blank range where their shells might find a weak spot. As they close to within 800 meters, the sheer scale of the enemy becomes apparent. The ground shakes rhythmically. This is not the vibration of trucks. It is the heavy, grinding tread of massive tracks. The sound of the enemy engines is different too. It is not the high-pitched whine of their own diesels. It is a deep, throaty roar, a gasoline-powered V12 engine that sounds like a dragon breathing. A third PT-76 tank attempts to charge the wire. It exposes itself for 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, the ghost on the hill fires. This time, the 90mm shell strikes the lower hull of the North Vietnamese tank. The physics of the collision are grotesque. The heavy American round carries so much kinetic energy that it does not just penetrate, it shatters the vehicle. The PT-76 tank stops dead as if it has hit a concrete wall. The explosion that follows is blinding. The remaining NVA crews are now fighting blind against an enemy that sees in the dark, moves with the weight of a freight train, and possesses armor they cannot crack. The psychological impact is devastating. They had briefed for a colonial police action. They have walked into a clash of titans. The mystery deepens when the NVA infantry, moving alongside the tanks, report hearing the mechanical whine of a turret motor. They claim the enemy turrets are snapping to targets faster than a human can crank a handle. This implies hydraulics. Complex, heavy, expensive hydraulics. This technology should not be here. The logistics of getting a 50-ton vehicle to Ben Het are impossible. The bridges on the road to the camp cannot support that weight. The jungle trails are too narrow. The terrain is too steep. By all tactical logic, the vehicle destroying them is a phantom. It is a physical impossibility. Yet, as the survivors frantically reload, they can hear the heavy clanking of tracks shifting on the hill. The beasts are moving. They are leaving their defensive hull-down positions and coming out to hunt. The hunter has decided to leave the cave. The psychological axis of the battle has shifted violently. The North Vietnamese ambush has collapsed into a desperate fight for survival. The few surviving PT-76 tanks are no longer coordinating an assault. They are scattered, isolated islands of panic in a sea of darkness. On the American side of the wire, the great steel shapes have done something the NVA commanders considered tactically suicidal. They have left their prepared defensive pits. With a grinding screech of metal on rock, the American behemoths roll forward, crushing the sandbags of their own perimeter. They are coming out to finish the job. From the viewport of the last operational North Vietnamese tank, the driver watches in disbelief. He knows the terrain around the Ben Het camp intimately. His intelligence briefings were specific. The perimeter is surrounded by a dense minefield. Thousands of anti-personnel mines and light anti-tank explosives are buried in that red clay. It is a death zone. No vehicle can cross it without being disabled. "They are driving into the mines," the driver shouts over the intercom. "They will track themselves." A surge of hope rushes through the NVA crew. If the Americans are arrogant enough to drive heavy armor into a minefield, they will be immobilized. Then, the PT-76 tanks can flank the crippled giants and pound their rear engine decks where the armor is thinnest. They watch, waiting for the inevitable explosions that will blow the tracks off the American machines. And the explosions do come. As the lead American tank rumbles forward, mines detonate under its treads. Flashes of orange light erupt from the ground, kicking up geysers of dirt and debris. But the tank does not stop. The vehicle is so incredibly heavy, weighing over 50 tons, and its suspension components are so robust that the mines designed to obliterate trucks and infantry merely scratch its paint. The American tank absorbs the blasts like a boxer shaking off a light jab. It rolls through the smoke of the detonations, its momentum unchecked. To the North Vietnamese, this is the stuff of nightmares. It is a juggernaut that cannot be halted by fire, steel, or explosives. The surviving PT-76 tank commander realizes he has only one option left. He is positioned near the wreckage of a supply truck, partially obscured by flames. He orders his gunner to load a high-explosive anti-tank round, or heat shell. This is their most potent weapon. It uses a shaped charge to burn a hole through armor plate. The distance is now less than 400 meters. At this range, even in the dark, they cannot miss. "Target the turret ring," the commander whispers. "Wait for the flash." The American tank fires its coaxial machine gun, a long burst of red tracers that scythes through the elephant grass. The muzzle flash illuminates the turret for a fraction of a second. It is a rounded, cast steel dome, shaped like a turtle shell to deflect incoming fire. Fire! The PT-76 tank rocks back on its suspension as the main gun discharges. The heat round streaks across the gap. It is a perfect shot. The shell slams squarely into the front of the American turret, right next to the main gun mantlet. The impact is deafening. A ball of fire engulfs the front of the American tank. Inside the North Vietnamese vehicle, the crew screams in triumph. They have done it. They have slain the dragon. Nothing could survive a direct hit from a 76mm shaped charge at point-blank range. But as the smoke clears, the silhouette is still there. The turret slowly rotates toward them. The hit was direct, but the curvature of the cast steel caused the jet of molten metal to dissipate harmlessly. The armor on this American beast is not just thick, it is geometrically designed to reject death. The American response is not a shot, but a light. Suddenly, the jungle around the PT-76 tank is bathed in a blinding white intensity. The American crew has switched their xenon searchlight from infrared to visible light. A beam of 1 million candle power cuts through the darkness, pinning the North Vietnamese tank against the trees like an insect on a display board. The NVA crew is blinded. They throw their hands up to shield their eyes, but the light is searing. They are exposed, naked. Then comes the thunder. The American tank fires its 90mm main gun. The shell, a canister round filled with thousands of steel bearings, turns the jungle into a shredder. It strips the foliage away, exposing the PT-76 tank completely. A second round follows instantly, an armor-piercing shell that strikes the NVA tank in the track mechanism. The drive sprocket shatters. The track unspools like a dead snake. The Soviet-built tank spins violently in the mud, immobilized. The crew bails out, scrambling into the terrifying dark, abandoning their machine. As they run, they look back one last time. The American tank does not stop to celebrate. It continues to roll forward, its engine roaring with that deep, distinct V12 rhythm, crushing the abandoned PT-76 tank under its tracks as if it were a tin can. This creates a new, deeper mystery for the fleeing survivors. As they retreat into the jungle, checking their maps, they realize a logistical impossibility. They had crossed the Dakbla River to get here. The bridges on that river are old, French colonial structures. They are rated for a maximum of 20 tons. The PT-76 tanks barely made it across without collapsing the spans. The monster chasing them weighs at least 2.5 times that limit. How did it get here? Did the Americans fly them in? No helicopter exists that can lift 50 tons. Did they drive them? The bridges would have crumbled instantly. It is as if these tanks materialized out of thin air, dropped directly onto the hilltop by some dark sorcery. The battle is effectively over, but the cognitive dissonance is just beginning. The North Vietnamese army has not just lost a tank engagement, they have collided with a technological and logistical reality they cannot comprehend. They threw their best armor at the Americans, and the Americans simply drove over it. As dawn approaches, the sounds of battle fade, replaced by the crackle of burning diesel and the low idle of the victors. The jungle, usually a place of concealment, has been stripped bare. The mystery of the ghost tanks of Ben Het will haunt the NVA briefings for months. But for us, looking back with the clarity of history, the answer lies in a specific piece of American engineering and a daring logistical gamble that no one thought was possible. The sun rises over the Central Highlands on the morning of March 4th, 1969. The smoke that has choked the valley all night begins to drift upward, revealing the carnage of the battlefield. For the North Vietnamese observers watching from the distant tree line, the light of day brings a terrifying clarity. The monsters that decimated their armored assault are no longer shadows or phantoms. They are sitting in the open, their engines idling with a low, confident rumble. They are M48A3 Patton tanks. To the American crews of the 1st Battalion, 69th Armor Regiment, this vehicle is simply the Patton. To the rest of the world, it is 52 tons of Cold War diplomacy forged in steel. The revelation of this specific machine explains every impossible anomaly the North Vietnamese tankers faced during the night. The mystery of the invincible armor, the seeing-eye darkness, and the devastating firepower is not magic. It is the result of a specific set of design choices made by American engineers to counter Soviet heavy armor in Europe, transported halfway across the world to a jungle in Southeast Asia. The first part of the mystery, the pink glow and the ability to see in the dark, is solved by looking at the massive box mounted directly above the main gun. This is the AN/VSS-1 Xenon searchlight. It is one of the most powerful tactical lights ever mounted on a combat vehicle. Inside that armored box is a short-arc xenon lamp capable of generating 1 million candle power. During the battle, the American crews were operating this light in infrared mode. By placing a special filter over the lens, they blocked all visible light, projecting a beam of infrared energy that is invisible to the naked eye, but shines like a spotlight through the M48's infrared periscopes. The North Vietnamese, lacking this technology, were fighting blind. The pink glow, they reported, was the faint leakage of the high-intensity arc lamp through the filter, a technological signature that signaled their doom. They were never hidden. Every move they made was illuminated as clearly as if it were noon. The second mystery, the invulnerability of the American tanks, is a matter of metallurgy and geometry. The M48 Patton was designed with a cast homogeneous steel hull. Unlike the PT-76, which is made of welded plates of thin steel designed to be light enough to float, the Patton is designed to take a beating. The front of the turret boasts armor that is 110 millimeters thick, but the effective thickness is much greater because of the slope. The shape of the Patton's turret is elliptical, resembling the shell of a turtle. This is not an aesthetic choice. It is a mathematical one. When the North Vietnamese fired their 76mm shells, the rounds did not strike a flat surface. They struck a curved, angled surface. The physics of the impact caused the energy of the projectile to deflect away from the center of mass. This is why the NVA crews saw sparks and ricochets. They were firing light cannons at a curved wall of steel designed to survive a nuclear battlefield. The PT-76 main gun simply lacked the kinetic energy to penetrate the Patton's frontal arc. It was a mismatch of physics. The third mystery, the devastating shredding of the jungle, reveals the terrifying versatility of the 90mm M41 main gun. The North Vietnamese assumed the Americans were firing standard high-explosive rounds. They were wrong. The American crews were utilizing a specialized ammunition type known as the M336 canister round. Imagine a shotgun shell the size of a man's leg. The canister round is packed with 1,281 steel pellets or flechettes. When fired, the casing splits open as it leaves the barrel, turning the main gun into a massive shotgun. At close range, against infantry and light vehicles like the PT-76, the effect is total saturation. The invisible force that stripped the vegetation and exposed the NVA tanks was a wall of flying steel moving at supersonic speeds. It didn't just kill the target, it erased the environment around the target. But the greatest mystery of the Battle of Ben Het remains the logistical one. How did 52-ton monsters get to a remote special forces camp accessible only by dirt tracks and rotting colonial bridges? The answer lies in the sheer industrial will of the United States military. The North Vietnamese intelligence had calculated the logistics based on normal movement. They failed to account for the American Rome plows and the combat engineers. Weeks before the battle, the US Army had decided to turn Ben Het into a fortress. They did not just drive the tanks there, they terraformed the route. Massive, militarized bulldozers cut a swath through the jungle, widening the narrow Route 512. Where bridges were too weak to support the Pattons, armored vehicle-launched bridges, AVLBs, were deployed tanks that carry a folding scissor bridge on their chassis, laying down their own road over rivers and ravines. Furthermore, the M48A3 variant itself was the key. Earlier versions of the Patton ran on gasoline, which gave them a pitiful operational range and a tendency to explode when hit. The A3 upgrade retrofitted these beasts with the AVDS-17902A air-cooled diesel engine. This massive V12 plant doubled the tank's range to nearly 300 miles. It allowed the 69th Armour to drive from their base in Pleiku, navigate the treacherous mountain passes, and arrive at Ben Het without running dry. The The North Vietnamese heard the roar of engines and assumed they were trucks because their doctrine said tanks couldn't make that drive. They underestimated the American ability to project power through logistics. The Battle of Ben Het stands as a singular anomaly in the history of the Vietnam War. It was the only time American and North Vietnamese tanks engaged each other in direct combat. The result was a total American victory. 2 PT-76 tanks were confirmed destroyed, and the wreckage of a BTR-50 armored personnel carrier lay smoking on the perimeter. The Americans suffered only minor damage to their vehicles and no fatalities among the tank crews. The shock felt by the North Vietnamese tankers was not just fear, it was a collision with a superior industrial reality. They had brought a knife to a gunfight, only to discover the enemy had brought a sledgehammer. The wreckage of the NVA tanks was left rusting in the jungle for years, a metallic monument to the night the ghost tanks came out of the dark. This engagement proved that American armor could operate effectively in the jungle, dispelling the myth that Vietnam was solely an infantryman's war. The M48 Patton, often overshadowed by the Huey helicopter as the icon of the war, had proven itself as the iron backbone of the conflict. Thank you for watching this episode of Cold War Impact. If you were fascinated by this clash of steel in the jungle, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more deep dives into the forgotten battles of history. Let us know in the comments. Do you think the outcome would have been different if the NVA had deployed their heavier T-54 tanks?